And as the Biden administration downplays the crisis at our border and calls it a challenge, we're seeing these shocking new images of young children that are just being abandoned. Human smugglers reportedly advertising their services now on Facebook. Since Biden took office less than 3 months ago, a Border Patrol official captured a heartbreaking video of a young boy who says a group abandoned him at the border.
¿Tu papá?
Nadie. Yo venía en un grupo que venía de entrega con usted y al final me dejaron botar y venía aquí a pedir auxilio.
¿Te dejaron botado y te dijeron que vinieras a pedir auxilio?
No, yo vengo porque si no, ¿para dónde me voy a ir? Allí voy.
Joining us now, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. Ambassador, great to have you on the program this afternoon. Thank you for being here. You can't help but just feel your heart break for that small child and the other small children. I'm sure, Ambassador, you saw last week those two small girls, ages 3 and 5, that were just dropped over the border wall, left to fend for themselves. Thankfully, we can tell you that they, too, were rescued. You're offering a solution to this problem today. What do we do to fix it?
Well, it'll break anyone's heart. And, you know, I think it's not about coming up with a new solution. We had the solution. I mean, the Trump administration had the same migrant problem, but they fixed it. And what they did was they used tough love with our friends. You know, Guatemala and Honduras are friends of America. They are not anti-American. These kids are, and so many of these migrants are coming from Central America. And what the president did was he gave them tough love. He said, this is what we expect of you. We will partner with you, but you've got to control the situation in your country. If they want asylum, they have to apply from there. From there, he worked through Mexico, which is where they were coming from, to make sure that we had a handle on it. It's really unacceptable that Biden is so obsessed with Trump reversals that he'll literally put the American public and these kids at risk the way he is. And then he gives Kamala Harris, apparently she's the one in charge. This is the same person that encouraged 7,000 migrants to come to America. She referred to ICE as the KKK. She's now in charge of this. She's been missing in action, and God help us if she ever becomes president, because if this is how she handles a crisis, I mean, I just can't imagine how she would run our country. And so it's really devastating. But, you know, the one thing we did, and I traveled to Honduras and Guatemala, we had these conversations with them, and it was help us, help you. But we're not going to sit there and put up with your problems. And these smugglers are coming. They're making money on every one of those children. They're making money on everyone. They will leave a child if they don't have their shoes. They will leave a child if they're too slow. It's inhumane. It's unacceptable. And, you know, really, this is the idea that anyone would be okay with the way Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are handling this is just unthinkable.
Ambassador Haley, there also seems to be certain issues with transparency as well. We had to fight tooth and nail to finally get cameras into that Donna, Texas facility, which did happen. But then yesterday, Customs and Border Protection put up news that 2 Yemeni men who are on the terror watch list had been apprehended trying to cross the border, one at the end of January, one at the end of March. Suddenly, that information was scrubbed from the DHS website, and that has led leader Kevin McCarthy to now say that he wants a briefing by the FBI and the CIA on these 2 guys and whoever else might have come over the border. What concerns does that raise for you?
We've seen a real arrogance from the Biden administration in that they will only show and tell us what they think we need to know. It's demeaning. It's unacceptable for the American people that the president is withholding information. And I think this is a trend, you know, whether it's him not doing press conferences, it's whether them being mum on certain things that they're doing, not letting us know what their solutions and goals are until it already happens, whether it's not working with Republicans. I mean, it's very much a arrogant way of having his presidency, and to go and hide and decide what we can and can't see. I mean, it's just unacceptable.
Ambassador Haley, I can't help but think you offer such a unique perspective to this crisis at our southern border at a time when you are seen as such a prominent female figure, I should just say, in your party. But you've also, at this moment, got the first female vice president in the White House. And she has been deployed to fix this crisis at our border. We put a map together, Ambassador Haley, of where the vice president has traveled in the past 2 weeks. It is nowhere Never. It has not been a stop at the border. I mean, you look, she went to her LA home, a water plant. She's flown in 14 days. She's been to all of these different places. In 2 weeks, she's held only one phone call with the Guatemalan president. She's offered no interviews or press conferences on this. She has yet to hold an interview or even call this a humanitarian crisis. And Ambassador Haley, when we go back and we hear that small child, or we see those two girls dropped over the border, and I go back to a tweet of yours 2 weeks ago, very clearly stating that this was a woman who compared ICE to the KKK in 2018. How can we as Americans have confidence that this administration is going to tackle this crisis, knowing that they're just still a couple months in?
Well, I mean, they have completely taken on this crisis and thought out of sight, out of mind. The fact that Biden or Kamala haven't visited it, the fact that Biden put this in Kamala's lap and she's done literally nothing. How can you look at that boy? How can you, with a good conscience, look at these kids and be okay with this? They are being abused as they come along the way. You don't know that that they've had anything to eat. You don't know who's bringing them over. You're seeing them dropped over a 14-foot wall. Thank goodness that they're okay. But the idea that all she's done is laugh about it and has not shown up. One, Biden should fire her from the position of handling the border crisis because she's done a terrible job. Two, we should all fear Kamala Harris ever becoming president. And three, the one thing that would fix this is them getting their pride out of the way and understanding that what President Trump did on the border worked.
Ambassador Haley, let me point to another tweet of yours, this one from yesterday, on a different topic, and this is what's going on in Georgia in the wake of the new voting laws that were signed by the governor not too long ago. You said, quote, Biden wants to give the green light for American companies to invest in Iran, the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, yet he's telling them to boycott Georgia. Someone should remind him that he works for the American people. Your thoughts on what's going on in the state of Georgia? You were a governor of neighboring state South Carolina for a number of years.
You know, first of all, it's, you know, the idea that he's encouraging business with Iran and will lift sanctions, but he's turning around and boycotting one of the states he's supposed to be president of, I think says all you need to know. I passed voter ID legislation in South Carolina in 2011. At that time, I was vilified and said we were disenfranchising people from voting. I will continue to say that liberals need to quit acting like minorities are ignorant. We are not ignorant. We are perfectly capable of getting a photo ID. We ourselves want to see that our vote counts and that there is election integrity to make sure that our vote counts. So don't act like we are incapable of doing things. And that's what they're doing. That's what Delta's doing. That's what Koch's doing. That's what Biden's doing, is you're treating minorities like they're stupid, and we're not. And that's the one thing that I think is so upsetting about this whole thing, is what Georgia did was make sure that the votes would be counted, that you had validation, that you had accountability. In South Carolina, when they said that we were disenfranchising voters because they couldn't get a picture ID, I said, fine, anyone that needs a picture ID, we will go pick them up, take them to the DMV and return them. Out of 5 million people, you know the number of people that asked for help? 25. And I will tell you, by adding voter ID, the number of votes in South Carolina went up. It didn't go down. Georgia just improved their voter situation. The private sector needs to stay out of it. And Joe Biden to sit there and boycott one of his own states and discourage business from those states when so many Democrat states have weaker laws is really, it's cowardly. It's cowardly, it's demeaning, and it's disrespectful.
And despite criticism like that, he seems to be doubling down. Here he is again in his own words using that reference. Listen.
It is reassuring to see that for-profit operations and businesses are speaking up about how these new Jim Crow laws are just antithetical to who we are.
I mean, what is he doing as far as unity that you can see that he promised on the campaign trail?
Well, to refer to it in any sense with Jim Crow is, again, it's disrespectful because clearly he doesn't know anything about Jim Crow to acknowledge that. Secondly, it concerns me about his well-being if he literally hasn't taken time to read a bill of one of his own states. Then you're going to boycott businesses to one of your states, Georgia, that's going to lose jobs, lose revenue, to a state that is heavily African American. You're giving it to a state that's heavily white. Exactly who are you fighting for? And then to turn around and imply that they're better companies if they pull out, yet you're going to go and support the world's leading sponsor of terrorism, Iran, by encouraging American businesses to open back up with them. I mean, his wires are crossed. And I mean, this is a dangerous time for America. It's divisive. It's unaccountable. It's not transparent. And you can blame Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for all of that. This is the #1 reason we need to remember elections have consequences.
Ambassador Haley, we mentioned Iran there. There's also the issue of China. Coca-Cola is a sponsor of the Beijing Olympics. Apple, Nike, other companies were concerned about a law that would prohibit the importation to the United States of goods that were manufactured through forced labor in Xinjiang province. You've got Ned Price yesterday, who was the spokesman for the State Department, saying, you know, we're in consultation with our allies about a boycott of the Olympics, to which the State Department came out shortly after and said, no, 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 we're not considering a boycott of the Olympics. So on the one hand, you've got the boycott of Georgia and what's going on there. And then anytime you bring up the idea of a boycott of the Olympics, you have official Washington running out to say, no, we're not considering that. Seems to be at least a little bit of a double standard here.
You know, he refers to the Georgia law as a Jim Crow law, yet he's not doing anything about literal slavery happening in China. You've got slavery and genocide happening in China, which, by the way, Major League Baseball is also trying to do business in China on top of all of those other companies that you mentioned. So they're all willing to support slavery, support genocide, support physical and sexual abuse of people in China, and then they're going to disenfranchise people from being able to show voter ID to be able to vote. I mean, the idea that all of this is happening, it's going to backfire. You mark my words, every ounce of this is going to backfire. Every day Joe Biden is in office, the Republicans unite. And every day that we unite is one more day closer to when we win the elections back in 2022. This is where America has literally, the corporate side, the administration, they've lost their minds if they're going to turn around and think that the American public is going to fall for all this. What's going to happen is these companies are going to get boycotted. Major League Baseball is going to get boycotted. America should be leading the charge on the Chinese boycott, and they're watching to see if we're capable of doing it. I mean, there's some real leadership lacking here, and I think America's feeling it, and the rest of the world is shocked.
Ambassador Haley, we've got to leave it there, but I can't help but hear you and hear in so many different circles your name being thrown around for 2024. Is that something that you're hinting at or working on today?
Well, I think right now we started Stand for America PAC, where we are going out and we're going to recruit, make sure we win the House, win the Senate in 2022. So if any of your viewers want to stay in touch with what we're doing, standforamericapac.com. That's our focus. The only thing worse than Joe Biden for 4 years is Joe Biden for 2, or the only thing better if Joe Biden for 4 years is Joe Biden for 2. So we want to make sure we win the House and Senate so we can put a stop to all this chaos.
Got it.
Well, we'll take that as a soft yes, Ambassador. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right.